Good morning.
Now this morning, James Meek.
Yes, James McKain, Archibald, Jobe, Meek.
Right.
One of the most fascinating characters that's ever lived in Warrnambool.
Okay.
Known mostly today as a very talented calligrapher, but he's actually starts off as he's born in Norfolk, and he's already a fisherman there and a fish canner, and because of those origins, he's always called the Yarmouth bloater, Yarmouth being the place where he was born, and that's the name of a fish, right. The Yarmouth bloater.
Okay.
But James McKain Meek came to Australia as the tutor to Governor Gipps's older children in Sydney.
Right. And
he married the governess there, who was the governess to the younger children, and she was the sister of John Hollands Craig, who was one of the founding settlers in Warrnambool, who actually built the first building, which of course was a hotel, the Craig and Nicol Hotel. But anyway, before he came here, though, he went to the goldfields, and he went to Ballarat, and he found it almost deserted because they'd gone off to another to another strike in the Mount Alexander goldfields. But while he was there, he and some others found another reef and sort of restarted the interest in Ballarat. And he is regarded by many as, if not one of the founders of Ballarat, because he built the first home there.
Really, right.
And built it himself, and as an artist he drew it, so we've got a lovely picture of it. And he set up there what was called the Lemonade and Soda Factory, but was really a sly grog place. And the police facetiously called it the Trooper's Arms, even though it was meant to be a lemonade shop.
So they knew what was going on.
He made a lot of money. He made about over £5,000,
wow.
Which was a big lot of money. He went to Melbourne as a fishmonger. He bought 3 big fishing ships, little boats. He set up a cafe, and he wasn't there, and that's where he invested the money. But he wasn't there long before the ship's little boats were destroyed by a big storm. Right. The cafe was burnt down, and so he was broke again. So in 1855 he came to Peterborough, and he is regarded today as the founder of Peterborough, because he set up there. There was nobody there. He was the only person. He set up there a little cannery business, making him the first fish cannery operator in Victoria, and because of the fishing, you see.
Right, yeah.
He was a pioneer explorer. For instance, he explored, the first person to explore and go along the track from the mouth of the Curtis River to Terang, which is the Ayersford Road today. And because of his children growing up, he had to have a school for them. So in 1856, and there's the date, he came to Warrnambool.
Right.
And he set himself up as a fish shop owner in Banyan Street, and he also ran the Hopkins River punt. But poor James Meek did not have any business sense. He was far too lenient with people. Nobody paid the fare, on the punt. They all had excuses as to why they shouldn't, and he was always out of money. He had a very great long beard, and he began to be known as a sort of eccentric. Right. Now, in those days in particular, he was hassled, he was harassed, and his family were harassed because he was regarded as a bit odd. Right. And his children, for instance, were bullied at school, so much so he had to pull them out. But he did set up, with other people, the Western District Fishing Company with a boat called the Tiger, a big boat. The idea was to get a lot of fish in our area and fish all along the coast and sell it in Melbourne. And he had a company, and there were a lot of people in town invested in this company. And the first trip was very successful. 100 dozen crayfish landed in Melbourne.
Wow.
And sold out. Then the next couple of ones he had trouble. The ship was delayed because of storms, and all the fish went rotten. And after a year, this fishing company collapsed, and he was very unpopular in Warrnambool because of everyone's money. So he left there. But in the meantime, he went to become a librarian, by the way, at Melbourne Library.
As you do.
He obviously is an intellectual. Yeah. And by this time, his calligraphy, his pen and ink sketches, all done in, with the scrolls and the letters and all the different little buildings drawn in, he'd become well known because in the 1861 exhibition in Melbourne, international exhibition, he got first class. He got the gold medal for his huge atlas of the Australasian colonies.
Right. Oh.
Our society actually has a very tattered copy of that. It's a beautiful thing, and it's enormous. It would fill this room.
Right.
And in fact, it mightn't fill this room. It's 200 centimetres by 120.
That's pretty big.
Queen Victoria, I don't know how she knew, but she declared he was the best calligrapher in her empire.
Right, okay.
So that was pretty good publicity.
Yes.
So he tried to make a living, you see, from this calligraphy. He would make all these enormous charts, sometimes on topical events like a shipwreck, sometimes on a religious subject. He was very religious. Sometimes just on the historical aspect, like he's got a famous one called the historic gum tree at Ballarat with the gum tree. And on these charts that he would make, he'd have all the history of everything, and he'd name all the councillors and all the people in the district, and therefore a lot of them would sell. But he didn't normally sell the huge one. He would make lithographs of them and sell them for sort of a shilling each, 10 cents, and sometimes even raffle them. He ended up coming back to Peterborough, and he started to write, he started to speak, and in Warrnambool he's regarded as the best speaker they've ever had at the Mechanics Institute, because he started to talk about there's gold in the Otways.
Right.
Because of his explorations. He'd been down there and he'd brought back specimens.
Right.
And so he created so much interest that they set up the expeditions, and they'd finance him. But and there were several of these. He wasn't the only one. I think there's probably about 6 different expeditions, but we're talking about him.
Yes.
But he went down with his 2 sons, financed by this company, but in very poor, difficult circumstances, not enough food and so forth. But he was able to note the timber in the area. He brought back samples. He said, here is not only gold, but here's a gold mine in timber.
Timber, right.
And however, he and all the others didn't realise that what they were finding was alluvial gold that had been just washed down in creeks, and that the whole place was never going to have gold
deposits, right? Yeah.
Deposits at all. And he didn't find that out until he had nearly killed himself, going through. You can imagine what it was like. It's almost impenetrable even now. Well,
yes.
Anyway, he did blaze a trail. He's regarded as the most important explorer for the Otways. Quite a lot of his works are in Ballarat Art Gallery, a lot in the State Library, and he's regarded as one of our eccentric, brilliant people.
Right, gee, what a fascinating, restless life as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I used to call him a loser, because what he did, it was unsuccessful, but he certainly tried.
Yeah, indeed. Fascinating.
And, yes.
Yeah, very much to thank him for. Elizabeth, thank you again. We'll talk to you soon.
Right.